Hello guys, Crispy here, welcome back to another video. In this one, my friends, I'm gonna be testing the Minisforum V3 gaming tablet. Yep. Actually, it's not only a tablet, it's a 3-in-1 system. It's a tablet, you can touch things around obviously like a tablet. You can also draw things on it with a little pen. It's a laptop, as you can see, with a strong magnet right there to keep things in place. It's nice. And it's also an external display. So if you want to use the Quad HD Plus 1600p resolution monitor here with 165 Hz, you can use it as an external display for your PC using the V-Link connection right here. So let's talk tablet first. The display itself is super responsive. You can touch things around, of course. It's 165 Hz, as I told you. Great for gaming, great for drawing as well with the pen. The palm rejection isn't the greatest though. I'd like to see that improved, but it works fine overall. Another good thing about this is the I/O. We got a headphone jack at the left, a volume up and down button, an SD card slot, which is absolutely ridiculous. I love it. I actually have used it quite a few times since I received this product. Great stuff. And that V-Link connector. Now it's USB-C, but if you plug an SSD into it, for example, it doesn't do anything. It seems to only be there for that external display capability. On the other side, we got the power button, a couple of USB Type-Cs. These ones work with SSDs just fine, as you can see. Yep. And they also work for charging the device, whereas the V-Link one doesn't even charge the device. At the top of the tablet, you got some ventilation holes, and you can see the cutout for the fans at the back, by the way. And lastly, on the bottom, you got the connection for the keyboard and touchpad. And you know what? The 16x10 14-inch form factor is actually pretty nice for a tablet, and the PPI is dense and so on. It's a great tablet experience, aside from one little thing. The speakers. The speakers on it are very teeny. They don't have bass whatsoever, unfortunately. It works, right? But you'd expect more for the $1,500 price point that this starts with. Although you will probably find it very often on sale. Now, another thing that we need to talk about is the hinge design. You gotta use a separate piece for that. It's a back case for the tablet. It works very well. It has strong magnets, but I'd like to see this included or built into the tablet itself. Now, let's talk a little bit about it as a laptop. So, of course, all of the other things about the display and so on remain the same, but this keyboard is pretty decent. The keys feel nice to press, although I'm not very picky when it comes to keyboards and stuff like that. Even membrane keyboards are fine for me, as long as they accurately register every key press. It is backlit as well, which was a nice surprise. I wasn't expecting that for some reason. And the touchpad is a bit on the smaller side. I wish it was a little bit bigger, but the main issue that I have with it is that sometimes if you press down on it, on like the bottom left corner, it doesn't really register, although it goes down, you know? So that's a little bit weird to me. Maybe it's my unit that has this little issue, but yeah, it's something to keep in mind. The touchpad experience is not really that great. Thankfully, we do have that touch display, which works really well. They also include this GAN charger, 65 watts. It's pretty dense, actually, for its size, and it's pretty small. I like it. It fast charges the device absolutely fine, and has plenty enough wattage for the specs that are in this thing, which are the Ryzen 7 8840U CPU with 8 cores and 16 threads, and using the Minisforum space, you can use the power balance mode, which locks the CPU to 15 watts, the power saving mode, which locks it to 15 watts, and the power premium, which locks it to 28 watts, and you need to be plugged in to use that one, by the way. For the memory, it comes with 32 gigabytes of RAM. That's great to see, because in terms of raw performance, this should be similar to like an Asus ROG Ally, so it's definitely capable of playing a lot of titles, but that extra RAM will make it so it's less stuttery in most of them. That's a nice and adequate amount of RAM for these APUs, especially because you'll be using some of that system RAM as dedicated VRAM for the games. And speaking of dedicated VRAM, the Minisforum V3 comes with 2 gigabytes dedicated for VRAM out of the box. Obviously, if you saturate the 2 gigabytes, it will swap into system RAM, which is exactly the same as the VRAM, so it won't really affect performance. But to be safe, because in some games it actually matters, I changed it in the BIOS, and the BIOS is actually pretty easy to navigate as well. It looks modern-ish, and I adjusted it to 8 gigabytes. So now I'm using 24 gigabytes as dedicated RAM and 8 gigabytes of that RAM just as dedicated VRAM. We also got a 1 terabyte SSD inside of this. It's from Kingston, and these are the reads and writes, an Intel Wi-Fi 6E card, and finally the graphics card, or the iGPU in the system, which is the Radeon 780M, which coupled with the 6400 MHz RAM should run a little bit faster than the previous 780Ms that I have tested here in the channel in other mini PCs. And that's about it for the specs and the user experience. I've been enjoying this tablet quite a lot, and I've been looking for a 14-inch form factor like this for a while as well. And now let's play some games on it. Shall we? Let's start with Cyberpunk 2077. We're playing this one at 1920 by 1200 resolution, and I'll be playing most games with this res because it looks great in a 1600p monitor of this size, because of the high PPI basically, and I'm using the high textures and the lowest settings everywhere else, aside from the lens flares, which are enabled. And let's start counting our FPS. This is native resolution. We're getting 40-ish frames per second right here, which is not bad. It's not the low preset, you know, the low preset actually has a lot of things on medium, and if you want 30 plus FPS at native resolution all of the time, you'll need to lower everything down to the minimum. Still, it looks acceptable. It's very impressive that a tablet can do this in the first place. And goodbye, Bob, once again. Oh yes, no, he's still alive, still alive. Bob, just die already, please. Come on, Bob, just die, please. He doesn't die, dude. He's still alive. Look at that. Okay, I think we killed him finally. Anyway, around here, it's usually really intensive. It's getting like 30s, mid-30s, sometimes 36 right there. I think it dropped down to like 34 once. So it's going to be a stable experience. Frame time graph is not super jittery or stuttery or anything. So it is a smooth experience, just a lower frame rate one. But it's definitely very playable on this little tablet V3 from Minisforum. Oh boy! But there are some things that you can do to improve image quality if you don't mind lowering resolution scale a little bit. So let's set it to the default low settings preset, but with quality FSR 2.1, and this again has a lot of things on medium, as you can see. Let's apply that. I'm gonna restart it, and here we have it now, looking a little bit better in terms of like reflections and shadows and ambient occlusions and so on. The lighting also looks better, but of course now we're utilizing that FSR2, which looks really nice still in this small monitor at the 1200p resolution on quality, of course. But yeah, it gets around the same performance. It looks a little bit better to my eyes, and in a small 14-inch monitor, it will look really, really nice, guys. The input lag isn't really bad or anything. The screen response times are also really good. I see no visual smearing or black smearing that you see often in VA panels. It's IPS, so it doesn't really have that, and it seems to be a quick IPS panel that they utilized. So quite a good experience here in Cyberpunk, and a good start for this video. And the next game is Counter-Strike 2. I'm playing at 1200p once again, using the low settings with the FSR turned off. And here we go, just started counting our FPS. It's going to be a high refresh rate experience apparently. Good stuff. Although I am using 60 Hz, if you noticed in the menu, because of the capture card basically. Alright. Also, we seem to have a little bit of a CPU bottleneck. Oh my god, I didn't kill that guy. Oh, I feel embarrassed now. But yeah, the GPU utilization isn't maxing out. It's at around 70% usage, so there's still a bit left on the tank, basically, if you wanted to increase the resolution or increase the settings. But once again, I really feel like you should stick to the 1200p resolution on a small screen like this instead of 1600p. It's just a little bit of a waste of that extra resolution because it's way harder to run, you know? You get way more frames like this, and the fact that we're not maxing out the GPU also means that the input lag from your inputs, of course, will be a little bit quicker in a competitive shooter like this one. Hello? That's way too quick. I can't. What do you think I am, game? A pro? Now, also, if we are having a CPU bottleneck, or maybe a RAM speed bottleneck, whatever, that means that in competitive mode, it will be a little bit faster And you are going to achieve more FPS because there are way more people in deathmatch servers than there are in competitive servers. It's 5v5. Seriously, mate? Oh my gosh, I am just terrible today in Counter-Strike. Bob is targeting me in this server, probably. It's all Bob's fault. Alright, let's stop it there. 101 FPS average and 57.1% lows. It never dropped that far. It's probably because I died a lot. Also, see this right here? It's 2v2 right now in a casual match, and it's getting 100 plus FPS or 130 plus all of the time, basically. No problems, because it doesn't need to render all of those people from the deathmatch, so it ends up getting way higher FPS. Alright, let's try the smoke and HE test right now. I'm gonna throw the smoke first. It's dropping down into the 90-60s right there, by the way. Okay. Dropping an AG grenade on top usually drops things by a lot more. 60 FPS minimum is what we got. So it's a stable experience in the end. Next is Horizon Forbidden West at 1200p resolution, again using FSR2 on quality and the very low settings preset. And guys, things don't seem that bright, right? Because, well, it's stormy weather, first of all, and things are at around 30 frames per second, but they do drop from 30 FPS sometimes, as you could see. Like, it dropped to 29 FPS for a second. Yeah, there we go once again. So it's not too stable of an experience. I was expecting a little bit higher performance, honestly. Now, this is still playable, you know, especially if you play with a controller or you use like DRS, Dynamic Resolution Scale, to achieve 30 FPS all of the time. That's definitely an option. So all you need to do is enable this setting right here, set it to 30 frames, and it will not drop from 30 FPS any longer. Whenever it would drop from 30, it will just render a lower resolution than previously, and that's it. It is going to look a little bit pixelated here and there, especially in areas where it would drop into like the mid-20s, you know. So you can definitely notice that. FSR isn't really the sharpest thing either, but it works. Also, guys, if you take a look at the VRAM allocation and usage in this one, at least with the APU, it's very low. It seems like it's just using RAM as VRAM by default and not allocating a lot of the assets and so on into VRAM itself, or at least into the 8 gigabytes that I set for the VRAM alone. Overall, it's playable, but you will have some issues, so I don't recommend this one. Now it's GTA 5, an older title, and we're playing this one at 1200p, of course, and the high settings with very high textures. Advanced graphics are all turned off. These are very, very intensive settings, and it's getting around like 80 to 90 FPS right here, which is pretty good, and that indicates that it shouldn't really drop from 60 FPS, but of course, we will need to go to Jack's Hill, which is one of the most intensive areas in the game, to check that out properly, you know, worst case scenario. Now, if you look at that GPU utilization, it's still hovering around like 80 to 90% most of the time, so those 28 watts are limiting the performance by a little bit, especially the CPU performance in this game. Still, it's plenty enough to enjoy it, obviously, and it's better than something like the ASUS ROG Ally, or ROG Ally as I like to call it, but ASUS doesn't really like to call it ROG for some reason. Alright, here we have it, Jack's Hill, with a lot of vegetation dropping down into the 70s. Since we were a little bit CPU bound, it doesn't drop as far as it would on a GPU bound gaming PC, for example, and I don't see Jack anywhere. He's not here today. Are you serious? I tested all of these games and it came to GTA 5 and included an old game like GTA 5 just to see Jack. And he's not here with us, my friends. Ooh, down to 53 frames per second in worst case scenario inside of bushes and stuff like that. But it's still stable and it's fully GPU bound over here, by the way. So you can definitely enjoy this game all the way through with something like this. Goodbye, Bob. There we go. Perfect. And Jack wasn't there, killing Bob either. I am disappointed, my friends, but at least the peace in the world has been restored and Bob is no more. Now we're playing Helldivers 2 at 1200p with quality render scale and the low settings. And inside of the ship we're getting around 50 frames per second. It usually gets a little bit less FPS over here than down in the game area, unless you're CPU bound and it starts bottlenecking it a little bit. And look at that, guys, close to 60 frames per second. Let's start counting the frames here, and And hello guys, how are you going? What are you doing? Alright, we got a few enemies here. Quite a lot of them actually. Okay, come on. This is on the hard difficulty, by the way. So in just a little bit, we will see a ton of aliens everywhere. Oh, that's a big one right there. I'm gonna throw a grenade maybe. Yeah, okay. Come on, come on. Die, buddy. Oh, there's a big one here as well. Vomiting on top of my friends. Come on. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Okay, it's stable, though. It's very, very stable, as it usually is. This game doesn't really stutter by all that much. It has a little bit of fluctuation there. It's not like a flat line, as we've seen with dedicated GPUs, but it is still very, very stable indeed. So let's kill these guys over here. Doesn't seem to be a problem, this game, by the way, even on the hard difficulty. God damn it. Okay, come on. Nope, don't vomit on top of me. Jesus Christ. Look at that explosion. Huge. And it didn't drop our FPS because the game is well optimized, you know? Interesting. This is just flying here. Is this supposed to be flying? Can I shoot the things? Yes. Okay. I just can't go below it for some reason. Oh, now I can. Okay. Interesting. It's a nice experience here in Helldivers 2, and you can defend democracy, my friends. Now it's Red Dead Redemption 2 at 1200p using ultra textures and the low settings everywhere else. And interestingly, if you take a look at the VRAM allocation and usage, they're pretty low, so it's not utilizing the 8 gigabytes that I allocated for it. It's weird. Anyways, moving on. We are getting around 45 frames per second, which is quite decent for Red Dead Redemption 2. You know, it's definitely very playable. It's not 1060 levels of performance. In fact, it's actually quite far from it. You know, a 1060 would be capable of delivering these FPS at like high or mostly ultra settings, but this is integrated graphics after all, and it's 1200p resolution, and it's still quite playable. There's no need to utilize FSR in this one, which looks alright-ish, but it gets a little bit rough in the edges, honestly. Also, frame time graph is quite smooth. There are no stuttering issues here in this one, so you can rest assured it's going to be a great experience. Let's go to a more intensive area, though. Oh, are these friends? Hello, buddy. How's it going? Is this the Jack, the new Jack of Red Dead Redemption 2, since I can't really see him any longer? Like, it's been a really long time since I found Jack in this one, right? But at least we see Bob once again. Wait a second, let me get my rope here, and let's go, throw it to Bob. Okay, there we go. It's Bob's demise once again. Look at him. Yes, go to hell, Bob. We're going to Strawberry right now. So we need Bob to drop our FPS, because that's all he does. He's always in the most intensive areas in games, basically. That's why he's here, near Strawberry. I'm just putting him in his place, right? This is it. Dropping down to the lower 40s, not even dipping into the 30s yet, so it's quite decent. I think it just died now. Doesn't matter. That's how Bob should be. Okay, so it actually dipped to like 38 FPS right there, but not a problem. Come on, come on, come on, come on. I don't want to hit your horse. There we go. There we go. Horses are friends. Horses are friends. Goodbye, sir. Good stuff. Next is Stutter Night. We're playing this one at 1200p using DirectX 12 and the low settings with 100% resolution scale, far view distance, and high textures. So competitive settings, basically. And here we have it, guys, getting 70 frames per second, but it does drop from 60 FPS, at least while dropping. It was dipping a little bit into the 50s. Still, it's definitely very, very playable here. Wait, come on, come over here. Yes, come back, come back. Oh, no, somebody stole my kill. That best Stutter Night, stop stuttering, please. And that's why you want to play in DirectX 12 instead of the performance mode, because performance mode stutters quite a bit more than this. This is mostly stable. Yes, it stuttered once, but it was probably just loading something, right? We just started the game after all. And if you require a high refresh rate experience, all you need to do is drop that 3D resolution whilst still having the DirectX 12 API, because that will make the game still look pretty reasonable on a monitor like this at 14 inches with the high PPI, you know, and get you those 100 FPS plus or something like that. Even inside of bushes, look at that. It's not dropping from 60 FPS. It's close to, but it's not really dropping. So what I'm gonna do now is showcase what I was telling you about. Let's do 69% resolution scale, why not, right? And with 69%, things are looking a bit softer for sure, but still seeable. You can still spot people at a distance and so on, and start counting our FPS. And here we have 100 plus on average. Much smoother experience, much more responsive as well than 60 to 70 and 70 to 80 most of the time. And now you can actually play the game competitively with 100-ish frames per second. And we're still fully GPU bound at this moment. Like the 8840U CPU is not maxing out. It's not bottlenecking our integrated graphics in this one like it did in Counter-Strike, for example. So there's still breathing room right there if you wanted to lower things further than 69% resolution scale. Hello? oh boy, no, wait, why did it stop shooting? I was using a weapon that I never used. God damn it, you bastards. Apparently that weapon only had a single shot. And I missed it. Of course I did. Now it's Dota 2, another esports title that's a little bit easier to run. 1200p as usual using the high settings. It's just the preset over here with maximum frame rate. It's dropping down into the 60s at times, as you can see, with a lot of effects on screen. So that's quite good. I mean, even if it drops into the 50s sometimes, I think that's a good experience in Dota 2. I myself have played this game for over 1,000 hours at this point, maybe 100 of which were benchmarking, but still. I've played it for a really long time, and I can safely say that the game is very playable even at like 40 frames per second. So 69 in an intensive area or intensive scenario with a lot of people fighting each other is definitely quite decent. It is CPU bound at the moment though, so don't expect a ton more FPS if you lower the settings, but there are some settings that are more CPU intensive, so dropping them will definitely give you more FPS. On low settings, for example, you can expect 100 plus all of the time. Something that we haven't talked about yet is those temperatures are really good in this tablet. As you can see, we're not maxing out the GPU or the CPU right now, but it doesn't really heat up by all that much. For a tiny form factor like this, I was expecting it to heat up a lot, and it just doesn't. So good cooling system that they got going on as well. Apex Legends is up next. We're playing at 1200p using the lowest settings aside from the textures and the anisotropic filtering, which aren't really intensive settings as long as you have enough VRAM. Alright, looking at the entire map, we're seeing mid-40s, low 40s at times. I already know what to expect just by looking at those results. It means that we're gonna see 60 plus FPS most of the time, but whenever stuff like ultimates and smoke effects and so on come into play, it will drop from 60 FPS a little bit. That is a little bit concerning for Apex Legends, you know, it's a fast shooter, first-person shooter, and you want a stable frame rate always above 60 FPS all of the time, preferably even 100 plus FPS all of the time, but this is integrated graphics that we're talking about at 1200p resolution. If you require a competitive experience, you can always drop it down to like 800p, 1280 by 800, which is still 16 by 10, and get those like 100 plus frames per second. I think it should definitely do that at that resolution. Like, it's good enough to play, and it's like a huge upgrade, for example, to someone who is stuck with... Oh my god, okay, no, please, okay, well, this is worst case scenario that we're seeing right now. Smoke effects and so on. Oh, farts. Okay, let me just go in this direction. No, I'm gonna die. Yep, okay, these people are merciless. Now, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna play the firing range right here because it gets very similar FPS to the actual game, and I don't die every 3 minutes or so, because that's exactly what's been happening for the last 20 minutes. Let's throw our ultimate here in the practice range or whatever this is. Training area, firing range, yeah, that's it. And let's see some explosions on top of smoke effects and so on. There we go. So it will drop down into the 40s in worst case scenario. Again, it's not even 30 FPS, so it's definitely a playable experience and it can be enjoyable, just not for a competitive person that wants everything to be super buttery smooth. So now we got Forza Horizon 5, guys. So we're playing at 1200p using no anti-aliasings and no resolution scaling either, so it's native resolution resolution using the high settings preset, and I've already tried this at 1080p medium settings with another mini PC, you know, with the Radeon 780M. It did get 60 plus FPS all of the time, so at 1200p medium it would also get that. But here I want to push it a little bit further and see what it can do using the high settings, and I'm glad I did. Oh my god, we're so fast, this is so fast, I can't, oh. What? We crashed against these trees? Seriously? So it's getting 60 plus FPS still, which is quite surprising. I thought it was going to get like around 60 mostly, but no. It seems to be very, very stable, although when we go to a city area, things will go south, of course, because it's way more intensive than here. All right, here we go. I'm going to start counting our FPS again. 70s, not a problem. It's still very easy to run, but over here is where it should start dropping, but it isn't dropping. Are you serious? Like, this is actually 60 plus all of the time. At 1200p native. High settings. It drops inside of the tunnels and getting out of the tunnels, of course, because that's the most intensive thing that you can do in this game. But the fact that it gets 60 to 65 or 60 to 70, it's very good. And at the end, we got 69 FPS average with 51 1% lows. This is definitely how I'd play this game. And it is conclusion time. I'll still have a few games running right here in their benchmark runs, and let's talk a little bit about this product right here. So the gaming experience with the Minisforum V3 was acceptable, you know, it's nothing special because it doesn't have a dedicated GPU, but the 780M integrated graphics can certainly play a lot of titles. And yes, you won't really get 60 plus FPS or even 60 FPS average in many of the AAA titles of today, but the fact that it runs them in this tiny little package, really slim as well, is kind of impressive, right? This is where we are with APUs these days, basically. Now, you will be paying quite a premium for this form factor if you bought like a mini PC with these same specs and even with a faster CPU like a 7840HS or an 8840HS, for example, 8845HS, so something like, you know, the AMD and their naming schemes. But yeah, mini PC with these specs, excluding the display, of course, is around what, like $700, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, depending on the brand and stuff and the configuration. So you can get the same performance for about half the price. Not in the form factor though, because if you are looking for a tablet, a 3-in-1 system basically, or a 2-in-1 laptop and tablet experience, well, what do you have in the market then that's actually capable-ish? Well, for starters, there's the Surface Pro 9, which has a pen as well. You can do everything that you can do over here on that system. It's also a 2-in-1 laptop and tablet experience with Windows, but that comes with like a 12th or 13th gen i7 CPU. Actually, the configuration that I saw only had a 12th gen i7, and it costs like $1,000 more than this. So the CPU is slower. The gaming performance will also be worse, as well as the CPU performance, obviously. And yet, it's way more expensive. You're paying a way bigger premium then. Maybe that's a little bit more well-built, you know. The touchpad on the keyboard won't really have any issues, like I found in this one. Although this is an early unit, so maybe it's because of that. But when you put things into perspective like that, this isn't really that outrageously overpriced, right? Now, there's also the Asus Z13 that comes with a dedicated GPU, but it's also way more expensive. So I guess for its segment, again, it's not outrageously overpriced. But yeah, guys, that's been it for this one. I really enjoyed testing this out, and it is going to be my main tablet slash laptop from now on. I'm even going to sell my 3070 laptop because, you know, I found myself these days playing more indie titles and stuff like that that work absolutely flawlessly on this thing, and this is way more portable than my 17-inch laptop. Thanks Minisforum for sending this once again, and thank you guys for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next one very soon. Love you all. Bye-bye.